I think we're going to start with a video because I want to wait for everyone to be in here. No, I'm just kidding. But I do have a fun video. One of the biggest things I'm going to talk about today is some of the Guinness World Records and overcoming obstacles. And a lot of people ask, how do you set a Guinness World Record? Well, how do you do something crazy like what I've done? So, as soon as the video's ready to go. All right, let's do it. There you go. Thank you, Princess. Love you. Now, my employees don't normally move that fast, just so we're clear. I wish they did. All right, you like that? So that was actually my second Guinness World Record. My first one was kind of what we have here. It was the world's largest fresh squeezed lemonade, and it's funny. A lot of people look at me and they ask questions like, "How do you come up with these big ideas?" Or "You are so creative." And sometimes it's not like I'm sitting there and all of a sudden, boom, this crazy idea comes to mind. Sometimes it is that way, but a lot of times it morphs. So, for example, on this one right here, it was when I wanted to do this. I kind of told you guys a little bit of the story earlier about how we engaged with Little Lighthouse and how we wanted to raise $10,000. But you need to understand, when you go to someone and say, "I'm going to make a 9-foot tall lemonade," the expressions that you get. Now, I'm used to them. And so when people look at me a little bit cross-eyed or off-kilter, it's just something that I'm used to. That's just how I live. And people don't, they don't get it. You know, there's a statistic that I love. 44% of people that give up after their first no. 22% give up after their second no or their second try. 14% after their third no, and 12% after their fourth no. The first one, 44 give up after the first no. Only 8% of the people try 5 or more times. So I was like, I want to make the world's largest. Actually, it started with I wanted to make a giant milkshake. So how are we going to make a milkshake? And so they don't have cups that are 5 feet tall. I tried to look for them, and I couldn't find them. And so we're trying to figure out how to make this happen. And so I thought, well, maybe we can go do a plexiglass company. And so I went to this plexiglass company, and I went in, and they basically slammed the door in my face. Like, this guy's crazy. And what's funny is we're working on a project with Keith's Lemonade Stand, which everyone will get a 6-foot cup when they sign up to be a sponsor. And I said, let's find out about getting a giant acrylic one again. And they pretty much did the same thing. I'm thinking, at some point you guys are going to believe that I do this kind of stuff. So then we tried, well, what if we did metal? But then, metal didn't work because the flavor and the citrus acid in the lemonade, and there was all kinds of issues. So then we said, well, I actually was thinking, how do they do barrels? Maybe we could do a giant barrel. Well, I couldn't find a company that would do that. And then what about a potable water tank? And so we actually talked about getting this big cylinder of a potable water tank and just slicing the top off it. I mean, you see them all the time, that they look like big cylinders. And it was like, well, we could do that. And so here we are. We're moving along. My wife will attest to this. We're moving along. This is when we were doing one of the bigger ones. And Guinness called me. And if you've ever dealt with Guinness World Records, it's their party. And it's no one else's party. It's their party. And if you got to play by their rules, even if they change them as they go. If you ever watched read the old comic strip Calvin and Hobbes, they would call it Calvin Ball because Calvin would always change the rules as he went along. So I was like, oh, what is this, Calvin Ball? And the guy was like, what? I was like, okay. So I was like, okay, so what? And he said, you can't use a potable water tank. You have to make a cup. And so I'm literally driving down the road on my way to Wichita, Kansas, and I look over and I see this giant fiberglass pool that is on its side. And I was like, well, if they can make a 40,000-gallon pool, why can't I use fiberglass for a cup? So I made my visit. It was like the fastest visit I ever made to Wichita. I mean, I literally drove there, turned around and came back and said, okay, I was there, tag, you're it, all right. Came back to Tulsa and found a fiberglass company here in Tulsa and went there and took a Chick-fil-A cup and I went and sat down in front of him and said, I want this 9 feet tall. And he goes, okay. And he's just quiet. And he just starts writing, And a couple minutes later he goes, you mean like this? And I was like, yes, yeah, can we do that? He goes, it's going to cost you. I said, I don't care. Let's do this. And so we're able to make it happen. But that is, it took me 7 times for that. A lot of times when it comes to overcoming obstacles, you're not going to be able to do it the first time, or maybe the second time, or the third time, or the fourth time, or the fifth time, or the sixth time. So recently, those of you guys who know me, this won't surprise you, I was reaching out to the boxer with a grill, George Foreman. So I'm reaching out to George Foreman, right? I was trying to get a hold of him. So we decided to send him a cake with like a business card that says, hey, we got a sweet deal for you, contact me. Okay? And it took us 17 times to get that cake delivered to the right place. 17. And it was just a matter of, when you call places and you say something like, I need to make a cake like this and can you deliver it at this place? They just start laughing at you. They're like, what? What is this guy about? So you got to be used to people saying no or people not being able to give you what you need. When we're setting this Guinness World Record, the obstacles that we came across were things like we had to squeeze over 100 cases of lemons. That's over 100,000 lemons that we had to Chick-fil-A freshly squeezes their lemonade. And so I'm looking at going, I don't know if we're going to be able, how are we going to do this? And we have to cut them and squeeze them. And so I did what any entrepreneur would do, is I made my customers do it. And so I offered them free Chick-fil-A for a year, and they had a contest, and they all came in and squeezed all the lemons. Now, at the home office, one of the guys in accounting told me one time, there's an ongoing joke, and the joke is there's either about to be a rule made about Arthur Greeno, or there is a rule made about Arthur Greeno. And so I get this phone call from somebody at the home office saying, we're concerned about food safety. I was like, what are you talking about? I got this, I got it. And they're going, no, you got to understand, we don't have operators that do what you do. So we're a little nervous. And so they flew someone out, and he sat down, and I showed him the diagram, said, here's what we want to do. And he said, okay. And he flew back and said, we got to get behind him. He's going to do it. And so that's what we did. And I was able to get all the lemons donated by Sunkist. And Danny was right earlier. Danny said, and this is something I say all the time, everybody wants to be a part of something big. Most people just don't know how. And so how do you become part of something big? So like when I called Sunkist and said, I want to do this crazy event, will you donate the lemons? They said, oh yeah. They're probably going, oh yeah, we'll do it because I don't have to do the work for it. We don't have to squeeze the lemons. But they joined forces with us. They gave us the lemons. And the sugar was donated. And of course the water I just got out of the faucet, out of the hose. It tasted like hose water. But there's always going to be obstacles. And with all the different crazy things that I do on a regular basis, I'm used to those people going, what? You want to do what? One of the biggest things I've learned is you got to calm down. When you're trying to reach whatever your goal may look like, you have to be quiet. The Bible says very clearly, be still and hear God. But we don't do that. And so, you hear all these people that talk about, I was in the shower and I had this idea, and my wife always teases me because I'm in and out of the shower pretty quick. I don't like to take long showers. I'm like, well, they're not doing something right if they're spending that much time in the shower. But it's one of those, that's when you're not focused on everything in life. When you're taking a shower, you're generally not focused on everything at the restaurant for me, or what's going on with the kids or something else. And so for me, one of the things that happens a lot is that I will be at praise and worship at church, and I'm focused on God, and all of a sudden these ideas just start popping into my head. It's like just random. I'm just crazy ideas coming on. I'm going, these are all great ideas, and I can't stay focused. So what I started doing was I would bring my phone, and I would always have the notes thing open. So I pull it out and I put it in there, and I put it back in my pocket, because I know for myself that I can't focus on God when I got these ideas pinging all over the place. And so I'll just put the ideas in there, put it back in my pocket, and then I can re-engage. But it's when we calm down. And I'm going to tell a little bit on Danny here, since he told on me. Danny and I were at a personal development course and years ago. And I remember sitting in a room, and Danny was sitting across. And the thing about personal development courses, and I could do a shameless plug, but I won't. You can talk to me later if you need to. But like Jim said, we spend more time planning our 3-day vacation than we do planning out our lives. And so that's when you get to sit there and really look in the mirror and go, do I like where I'm going? If I don't, what do I need to do to change? And Danny was looking at, and Danny stood up with a group of us. There was close to 100 of us, and he said, I'm going to be on The Biggest Loser. And I love Danny, but I remember thinking, okay. But Danny, that was a time when Danny was able to get real with himself and able to calm his mind down and say, this is what my focus needs to be. And that was really a big turning point for Danny. So as you're working towards obstacles, no matter how crazy they may be, what time are you really taking to stop and think? There's a lot of successful people that say they'll literally, the girl who developed Spanx, if you know anything about Spanx, it's kind of funny because I was doing some research on her because I had to send her something, and I was looking online to get all the information I can on her. And then, of course, nowadays with the computers and all the cookies and all those things I don't understand, I'm sitting there looking on the internet a few days later, and this girl pops up, and she's wearing all these, Spanx. I was like, what is up with all this? Why am I getting all these ads for Spanx? Well, it was because I was researching her. But she talks about just sitting on the couch and thinking, just having white time where she can just sit and think. Let her mind be clear. I wrote a book a couple years ago mainly because a lot of my team members, they would look at what I do and they would say, this just comes easy for Arthur. And what I had to explain to them is all the obstacles that I did have to overcome. It's not as simple as just making a lemonade, because the anxieties that I had was, I'm going to fail. I'm not going to do it right. I'm going to fall short of it. I'm not going to be able to achieve it. And my wife is very influential in me writing my book, and I have my book out there. But I went to 9 different schools when I was growing up. We bounced around because my mom was an alcoholic, and so she would lose her job. We'd have to go to the next job, and it was frustrating. By the time I was 10 years old, I had ulcers. We went to the hospital. They said, you had ulcers and you're 10 years old. What's going on at home? And for me, that was my normal environment. And so I was like, well, nothing. Everything's normal for me. When I was 13 years old, we were up in White Lake, Wisconsin, and my mom and family decided to move to Tulsa, Oklahoma while I was in Wisconsin. And so they basically put me on a Greyhound bus, and I got to travel from White Lake, Wisconsin to Tulsa, Oklahoma on a bus alone. And I didn't know if she was going to be there when I got there. I was hoping she was going to be there, and she was. But then when I got here and I started going to Union, and I was very self-conscious about stuff, about how I looked, how I dressed. The mom had money issues. The power would get turned off in our house on a regular basis. I was diagnosed with scoliosis. So when you guys are looking up here and saying, hey, that guy's standing crooked, I am standing crooked because I'm a crooked guy. Now, I don't get hung up about it because it gets me out of things like I never have to hang a picture. I never have to straighten out the furniture, stuff like that. So it helps me with certain things. But that's kind of what I grew up with. So when I went on with Chick-fil-A, and I didn't have a business degree, I had no business classes. But when I went on with Chick-fil-A, the very first store they gave me was Eastland Mall, Oklahoma, and it was one of the worst stores in the chain. And I remember when they offered me that store, thinking, why would I go? I wanted Woodland Hills. Now I currently own Woodland Hills. And I started there making $6 an hour when I first started with Chick-fil-A. And I remember when that happened, being mad and saying, you know what, I don't, I'm frustrated with this. I thought about just saying, forget it. I don't want it. But then I also thought, you know what, I have an opportunity here. And what am I going to do with this opportunity? So when it comes to overcoming obstacles, that's just how I was raised. So a lot of times I don't think about it. It's like, okay, what's the next step? What do I need to do? One of the things is, what is your mindset? I heard earlier talking about Sean Aker. Sean Aker wrote a book called The Happiness Advantage. Great book if you haven't read it. And he talks about the importance of having an optimist mentality. And my pastor one time told a story, and I love this story. He tells a story about how they took two kids. I don't know if it's a true story or not. They take two kids, and one of them they put in this house, and it had just toys and stuff everywhere. Okay, and he took this other kid, and they went over there, and the first kid was a pessimist. Okay, he kind of looked down on everything, and I put him in there and said, "Here's all the toys, the Xboxes, all the stuff, all the great stuff." And he put him in his house. And then they took the optimist and they took him over to this other house that just had piles and piles of horse manure. Just piles of it all over. Let's not talk about the health issues there, but anyway. So they let him stay there for an hour, and then went back and to the kid that was a pessimist, and they just heard weeping and crying. And they went in there and said, "What's wrong?" And he said, "There's so many toys, I don't know what to play with. I didn't know where to start." And so they're like, "Oh, well, we better go check on the other kid." So they get there, and as they get closer, they just hear screaming. Like, what's going on? And as they get closer, they hear it louder and louder. And they hear the kid going, "Woohoo! Woohoo! Wow, this is great, great!" And they get in there, and there's like mounds of horse manure just piled up, and tunnels going through it. And he's jumping out and throwing it in the air, going, "With all this horse manure in here, there's got to be a pony somewhere." What is your mindset? Are you... And what does that look like for you? For me, one of the things I do on a regular basis is I journal. And I'm very specific in my journaling. One of the things I journal about is what went awesome today. And I would write little notes about it. And mainly because it teaches our mind to search for those things that went well that day. Because it's very easy to, on a regular basis, just kind of all the bad stuff, just dwell on it. So I'm trying to teach my mind to look for those great opportunities. And one thing for me is, and Bob Harrison taught this about dominant images. So years ago, I wanted, and it's funny because he was talking about the Mustangs earlier, I wanted a 1969 Shelby. But... see, Bob's coming in now because he heard me. But he was talking about dominant images. And so I took a picture of the car that I wanted, and I put it on my wall. And it's been there for years. And there it is right there. That's actually not the picture. That's actually my car. And so, but one of the things I wanted about this car was I didn't want to mess with a 40-year-old car. I wanted all the new things with my 40-year-old looking car. That is a 2012 Mustang GT with a Shelby outside. So I got Bluetooth and all those cool, fun things with it. It is the best of both worlds. But I got that because my dreams were right there for me to see on a regular basis. In fact, I hear people come up to me and we talk about dreams. I go, well, where's it posted? I have it right here on my phone. As soon as my phone opens up, all my dreams are listed right here. What are the dreams and goals for me for this year? I think that's extremely important. I want to show you a video of a friend of mine. I'm going to be bringing Keith up in just a second. But one of the things I love about Keith is just his ability to overcome obstacles. Now, Keith has cerebral palsy. And so when he has to deal with things differently than we do. And it would be real easy for him to get hung up on things like not being able to do what the other kids do. Or just frustrations. And we're going to talk about that in a minute, a little bit. But he's an amazing young man. And so his mom and dad were telling me about him mowing the yard. So he wanted to help dad mow the yard. And in that situation, overcoming obstacles, you got to figure out how to get around the normal way to do it. So instead of me telling you how he did it, let me just show you a video on that. Notice how he adjusts right there to make sure he has a clean cut. He needs to train the guy who mows my yard. So that's Keith Boyd, and he's an amazing young man. And when he's controlling it, he's controlling how he's driving with his head, because the cerebral palsy that he has, he doesn't have any control of his hands or his feet. And is it going on again? All right, just in case you didn't get it, we're going to put it in slow-mo. And
you also got to let him know about what his mother and father said when he decided he wanted to go ahead and do this endeavor.
I'm sorry?
When he told his mother and father when he wanted to do this endeavor, what his parents told him.
You're talking about the mowing?
Yeah.
Yeah, he and his mom shared this with me, that when he wanted to do this, he actually raised the money to get that little mower thing. And so he got that because he wanted to start his own lawn mowing business. And so he went out and mowed the backyard, and they took that video of it. And then he went out. They were talking about, well, if you go out to the front, you need to make sure that when DHS shows up, Department of Human Services, that you let them know that this was your idea, not ours. Now, coming from a guy who my kids don't mow my yard, I really applaud him. So I'm involved with a project called Keith's Ice Cold Lemonade. And before I describe the project too much, I'm going to play a video that will really describe the project I'm involved in, why I'm involved in, and you guys will see why Keith is such an inspiration to me. Apparently, that's the only video we have today. So I want to introduce a friend of mine, and he has cerebral palsy. He has no use of his hands or his feet, or even some of his fine motor skills. If he chose to sit around and watch TV, we'd be okay with it. But he chose not to do that. And this kid has a big idea. He wants to raise $250,000 to go lighthouse.
Michael, she works super hard and has fun for a little lighthouse by filling up the name. They need the money to run the school. They take over care of special needs kids like me.
In essence, we'll need 10 lemonade stands all over Tulsa. My name's Greeno, and I'm a project mentor, and I heard about Keith and lemonade stand. I said, we gotta combine our forces here.
My name is Clay Clark. I'm the CEO of Thrive15.com. This is Keith, and that's his website right there, Keith'sIceColdLemonade.com. When we first heard about Keith and his big idea to start the lemonade stand for the purposes of helping others, we were absolutely...
You ready, kid?
And then when we go back, we found that he can't communicate using his mouth. He actually has to use his eyes when he's on the computer screen to turn his thoughts into the actual words he wants to say. We were just blown away.
I am a kid with a big idea to have the largest lemonade stand in Delta and raise $250,000 for the little nice house. And I'm a clever.
Here's a 10-year-old kid who built a business plan using his eyes. He built a Facebook page to tell the world that he's open for business. He's the guy acting in spite of his obstacles to turn his big idea into reality. We got excited about helping this guy, and the whole community is getting excited about it.
I'm so very happy you're on the list.
And number 2, from man to the planet, 10-year-old Keith Boyd is on a mission to raise $250,000 for the White House. And he's doing it with lemonade.
He has been really impressive, but I mean, he's kind of impressive as well.
He didn't know what he wanted.
Guys ready?
We're all in it, maybe kind of like the hands.
We're coming up right after that.
When he came to his business plan, which was amazing, he didn't have the ingredients, right? And he put the ingredients for lemonade in lemon, water, and honey. And I absolutely agree with that. That's a special secret ingredient.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's have a big round of applause for Keith Boyd. You ready, Keith? You ready to do this? All right, make sure the mic's ready. We're going to do this so that we can make sure we're picking up all the sounds. So you ready?
Yes, but I know you get nervous. Relax, we've got this.
All right, good. He's right, I do get nervous. You ready for this? All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask him some questions, and Keith we had to do a little bit of homework on this. I kind of send the questions ahead of time because, as you can imagine, it does take a little bit of time for him it'd be like you texting with your eyes is what it is. And so I gave him, all these questions are answered using his words. I wasn't involved in this at all. And so, in fact, there was some really funny things that I said, hey, we should put this in there, Keith, and he was like, no. And so I was like, no, come on, seriously, we got to put it in there. He's like, no. And so, in fact, when we first started talking about this, I said, okay, we need to make what do you think about making a logo for Keith's lemonade stand? And he said, no, it's Keith's Ice Cold Lemonade Stand. So he's all about making sure that we're doing it correct. Is that right?
Yes.
All right. Okay. So with your special need, Keith, sometimes you do not have your Toby device. On average, how many times do you need to say something for people to understand it?
Sometimes. Sometimes it feels like I am barking like a dog. No one understands me because they don't speak dog.
And how does that make you feel?
It's frustrating, but I get over it. I'm used to people not understanding me. It's not their fault.
That right there is one of the things that just impresses me with Keith. The fact that he's able to say, you know what, it's frustrating, but it's not my fault. How many times as leaders are we leading people and our employees aren't getting it? And yet we're not looking in the mirror saying, are we communicating correctly? Keith, earlier I was talking a little bit about your mindset and staying positive. You and I talked about this. When you get frustrated, what do you do to stay positive?
I like watching Duck Dynasty because I like to go hunting. I like wearing camo and being out in the woods waiting quietly.
Okay. How many of you guys have chosen not to go hunting because you didn't know how? But this is a young man that says, I'm going to go do it. Okay? And I agree with you. We talked earlier about pulling off to the side and making sure we're quiet. Keith does that. He likes to go and zone out and watch Duck Dynasty. I mean, I have to agree. If you're going to zone out on anything, that's a show to do it. Okay, 2 years ago, you wanted a dump truck, and your parents told you that 2 years ago you wanted to buy a dump truck, and your parents, his birthday wasn't around, his Christmas wasn't around, and they said if you're gonna do that, you're gonna need to figure out a way to raise the money. And if I recall right, the way he chose to do it was he was going to rent out the BOK, and he was going to have his parents and family. He had assignments for everybody, and they were all going to reenact the Big Bang Theory. Is that about right?
Yes.
But that got vetoed, as you can imagine. So he decided to create a lemonade stand. And so for the last 2 summers, he's been doing a lemonade stand, and he got his dump truck, and the rest of the money he's been given to the Little Lighthouse. Keith, why are you so passionate about Little Lighthouse?
The Little Lighthouse helped me get this computer, and it gave me a voice. It felt good. It was a relief for my mom and dad to finally hear my thoughts.
Cool. He is an alumni of the Little Lighthouse. Phenomenal organization. We actually have pamphlets and stuff over there, and of course this whole thing is about that. So please don't hesitate to grab some to learn a little bit more about it. You know, I'm on the board at the Little Lighthouse, and I hear stories like this over and over and over. And it's not as simple as just the kid that's involved. Okay, there's also parents that are involved. Okay, and Little Lighthouse does a phenomenal job of helping train the parents on, you know, try this, this will work. Okay, I was going to say this other thing, but you told me I can't, so I won't. So when businessmen and women are coming up against obstacles and get frustrated, what do you recommend, O Guru? What do you recommend? If they're coming up against obstacles,
Calm down and start from the top. Don't give up.
can you repeat that?
Calm down and start from the top. Don't give up.
Calm down, start from the top, and don't give up. I'm going to talk a little bit about what we're doing at the Keys Ice Cold Lemonade stand, but you know, but we're kind of going over this. I'm going to say this because this is just so impressive. One of the things I said to him is like, Keith, when we get done, what is the last thing that you would like to tell all these men and women before we leave? And his quote is profound, and I just love it. And so, Keith, why don't you tell him why don't you give him some words to live by?
I like this quote from Peter Pan. The moment where you doubt whether you can fly, you cease forever being able to do it.
Okay, can you do that one again?
I like this quote from Peter Pan. The moment where you doubt whether you can fly, you cease forever being able to do it.
The moment where you doubt whether you can fly, you cease to ever being able to do it. This young man doesn't have any doubts on what he's capable of doing. The reason that we have that stand over there, so Keith and I'm on the board at the Little Lighthouse, and so at Chick-fil-A we're talking about doing something. They said, let's do something cool again this summer. My crew said this. They said, let's do something fun. Let's do a lemonade stand. So we said, okay, let's do a lemonade stand. And so I went to Molly at the home office. She's a person I'm always calling, going, what do you think about this? And she's like, oh yeah, we should do it. And so I call her and said, here's what I like to do. She goes, well, Keith's done a lemonade stand for the last 2 summers. I was like, really? Keith? And I said, I need to get with Keith. So I get with Keith. His mom and dad come up, and don't they? Do you remember coming to Chick-fil-A? They came the first time, and they hand me a business plan. You do? Good. Okay, so they come to Chick-fil-A, and they present me a business plan. And I get hit up on a regular basis with people saying, Arthur, can I bend your ear? I need some advice on something. I have a crazy idea, and I want to do something. Just like you, huh? So they say they want to do these crazy things. And then I talk to them. I said, what's your business plan look like? And they go, I don't know. Well, how many, like one person said, we're building a coffee shop. And I said, well, they said, here's how much it's going to cost. Do you think we'll make money? I said, well, how many cups of coffee do you think you can sell in a day? Well, I don't know. They haven't even gotten that far. So Keith comes to me, gives me this business plan in a folder. And I open it up, and it says, it has all the list of stuff that he needs for this year. Okay? And the font on it is like big font and small font. I mean, it was awesome. And it said things like, do you remember this? This isn't actually a business plan. Your mom took it back because it's yours, and she wouldn't let me have it. But it said he needs it said I need cups. Like it said cups. It said 1,000 cups. It said lemonade. It just had all the listing of everything because he's already going through the thought process on how to make this big project happen, which is very important when you're doing a big project. You can't do it in one weekend. And so it impressed me, especially as an entrepreneur. As you can imagine, I told you earlier how I go to these places and say, hey, I need a giant cup. And they're like, what? For what? You can't do that. And so I look at it, and there's X's on some of the numbers, and says he wants 1,000 cups. There's an X on there and says 200 cups. And I was just laughing, going, man, I feel your pain. I'm constantly running into people that are like, oh, well, you can't do that. That's too much. That's too big. That's not true. If that's what we want, if we really want that we can have that. And so we said, why don't we do something fun together? Let's make a giant lemonade stand. And so what ended up being one giant lemonade stand is now 10 lemonade stands. And so what's happening at this point is, like in the video, Thrive 15 joined forces with us. And Thrive 15 is an online mentorship program for entrepreneurs, and it's launching in May. But these guys know what they're doing. They built a website for us. They've done a lot of work to help us get stuff together, and they've set up a lot of connections. Yesterday, we got a phone call from Fox 23, and they're joining forces, and they're going to be a main sponsor and sponsor us with the lemonade stand. We have the sponsorships for a tent like that, which is going to be yellow, and then it'll have all kinds of sides on it. We're actually going to go out in the community of Tulsa, and we're going to give away Chick-fil-A lemonade and tea. And of course, I got Sunkist to take care of it for us. So we're going to be giving away lemonade and tea on site. And if people would like to make a donation for Little Lighthouse, we would more than welcome it. But if a business comes along and they say, I want one of those stands in front of my business, and I want a 6-foot-tall cup like that one that's actually fiberglass, and they get to customize it however they want. They can make it purple with yellow polka dots. The only things that it has to have on it is Keith's Ice Cold Lemonade stand and the Little Lighthouse logo on it. It's $10,000. When I first did this, my goal was to raise $10,000. And now we're getting people walking up to us left and right and saying, I want the sponsorship for $10,000. We broke it down to where we're going to raise $100,000 by getting sponsorships of the lemonade stands. We already have 6. And then we're also going to be selling Chick-fil-A cups that if you're online and it's elsewhere, I'm sorry, it won't apply. But in the city of Tulsa, if you make a $100 donation for the Little Lighthouse, then you can get one of these cups, and you can go to any Chick-fil-A and get lemonade and tea for free. So, and then this morning, I was a little bit late because I had a meeting with a packaging company. And this is one of those, we're in a meeting, and it came up, and then we started exploring it. We're going to be making Keith's Ice Cold Lemonade juice boxes. How many of you guys, well, I don't want to raise a hands because I don't want to make anyone feel awkward, but when you come to an event like this, how many of you guys are truly networking? Think about it. How many business cards did I give out? Did I bring my business cards? How am I showing up? What do my dreams look like? You know, we were talking earlier as a group about when you were asking questions, talking about when you have a vision, your clarity. Well, when you have clarity on that vision, you're not worried about being embarrassed about it. You're not worried about what people think about it, because that's what we get hung up with. Keith has his Ice Cold Keith's Ice Cold Lemonade stand for something. I love that phrase. Keith Boyd, CEO. This young man came in a tie today because he told me that successful people wear ties. And so now I'm not wearing a tie, so oops. But I was moving some stuff today, so I told him ahead of time. But he did fire one of the news reporters that was there because he wasn't wearing a tie. All the rest of us were wearing a tie, and he wasn't, so he said, "You're fired," which was just totally Keith, if you know him at all. And he's just an amazing young man. And so we are going to be doing this lemonade stand. We're going to be doing it all summer long. It's going to be for 10 weeks. Every Wednesday, we're going to have 10 spots, including at Guthrie Green. We got them to let us to put it out there. And so, and all the vendors agreed not to sell lemonade and let us do it. We just got word yesterday that the Tulsa Drillers is doing a Keith's Ice Cold Lemonade Day at the park. And then every Thursday, we can set up a stand to do that out there. So, Keith's Ice Cold Lemonade stand.com is going to be the website, which should be launching in a few weeks. But as you can tell, there's a lot of moving parts on this. You know, we've already had national news medias contacting us saying we want to do something. We just have to wait for a little while because we want to do it closer to the event. But Keith, as a CEO, he will have to sample some lemonade from this company so we can make sure it meets his qualities. As well as he's probably going to have to go out and tour the plant and make sure that it meets its specifications. Don't you think so? So, but we have to order 158,000 of these. But you know what? I have no doubt that with the perseverance that I've seen Keith show and the people that he's teamed up with, if you don't have mentors in your life, you need to find mentors. Keith joined forces with us at Thriver, and on the video it says that he's a thriver. And he is. He's thriving. And he has every reason to stand there and say, you know what? I'm not going to do this. And we wouldn't bat an eye about it. I just want to thank you guys for the opportunity to come here, and I know that you guys are. Victor has some other stuff that we're going to talk about, but this is an amazing young man. Every time I go to visit with Keith, I come back inspired. I'm like, oh man, ask my wife. She's like, will you shut up about that kid? She doesn't mean anything by it, but she's sitting there going, I did not say that. Okay, I'm making stuff up. But I do talk about him a lot at home. And so, but Keith is an amazing young man, and he's a true inspiration to me and to everyone. The very first thing that was said here was talking about throwing a pebble in a pond. And Keith is absolutely doing that. So thank you, Keith.